welcome to another episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. This is the place where we bring in experts to talk about ways in which we can help you level up your M&A practice. I am your host, Nick Olson, Managing Director of Cornerstone International Alliance. We are a consortium of high-level M&A firms who focus on the lower middle market. Here in this platform, we bring in guests like my guest today, who are true masters of their crafts, who are experienced, knowledgeable, and gracious enough to share how they've succeeded in the world of M&A. We can bring their knowledge to you guys, and hopefully you can gain some insights and some help in your own M&A practice. So today's guest, I'm really excited for. He was our first partner to join Cornerstone International Alliance from Canada. He has a true passion for M&A and the work he and his team do for their clients. He started his own M&A practice at the early age of 38. He has also recently launched his own podcast. He grew up in a Mexican Mennonite community in Canada where he worked on the farm. His dad wanted him to be a construction worker. Somehow he made it to the world of M&A. We'll dive into that. He enjoys Scotch, spends a lot of time with his family, and coaches his kids' soccer teams. I hear he's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And my guest today is the founder of Portage M&A Advisory, Jim Friesen. Welcome to the M&A Mastermind podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Nick. Been looking forward to this.
My pleasure. What's that?
I've been really looking forward to this, and I'm impressed with the amount of intel you have on me. You probably even know my blood type based on some of the.
Hey, gotta do my recon on all my guests. So, I think it's important to get some insights into you on a personal level. And so I love the Scotch thing. Obviously, I have young kids. I think we're probably pretty close in age, and coaching kids is so much fun, and you gotta take that time for family and all that sort of fun stuff. And we're all pretty busy, but getting out on the field and coaching your kids is always a great time.
Absolutely. And I think, we'll probably chat about this in a few minutes, but one of the reasons I jumped into this space is, it's just a good fit as a family person, work-life balance and that sort of thing. And it just made sense to follow my passion in this way. But yeah, it's cool to be able to get out and coach the kids.
How old are your kids again?
8 and 4, so 2 girls. I'm badly outnumbered. I'm the only male, even the dog is female. So there's a lot of chasing and herding going on right now in my household.
Right. Yeah, my kids are 12 and 9, a little bit older, one boy, one girl. And it's always fun whether you're coaching or sitting and watching them do their activities, it's a lot of fun. And like you said, this industry, although we work a lot of hours and we work hard, there is the autonomy to be able to go and check out a soccer game, with our kids and family. And so that's definitely a benefit to being in this space. But, I want to take a couple of steps back. Now, I would love to hear about your background. And did I read correctly that you received a degree in kinesiology?
That was the first degree that I achieved. It was my passion for sports, and I really wanted to pursue a career in coaching, and that's where it all started for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. You go from kinesiology, then you go into finance. I think. How did that transit? Like you go to finance. Like why and how?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think growing up, I played a lot of sports, and I was fascinated with coaching and sports psychology and biomechanics and how bodies move. And it was a fascination I had. And when I went to university and started, I really thought I may want one day to be a coach, and wasn't 100% sure what to do. But I also was taking some business courses simultaneously. I grew up in a family business, so it's kind of following, I would say, my existing passion. And eventually, as I got closer to that 4th year, talking to more and more of the coaches at university, a lot of them suggested, hey, you know what, you're better off following your business passion first and using coaching as, a passion project later in life. And I thought long and hard about it. Business was also a passion of mine. So I pivoted went into accounting and finance and completed the CPA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have a similar path. You know, I enjoy sports. I do enjoy sports. I played, sports all through college and whatnot, and I wanted to get into sports marketing, and so that was my path, kind of like yours with kinesiology. I just, obviously there's a business component to that as well, but you think what you want to do in college, and you fast forward, almost 20 years now, which is crazy to think, and what you end up doing is vastly different, but you take all those things you've learned from your sports, history, whether it's coaching or sports marketing or your playing years. And I think there's a lot of things that you learn there that you can really put into practice in your professional life. I mean, how has that helped you?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Similar to you, I grew up playing ice hockey, indoor volleyball, beach volleyball, and soccer. And even professionally, when relocating to a different region, I was able to quickly network just through sport, right? I was able
Yeah.
to join a men's league, play hockey, and it was amazing how many professionals I was able to meet. And quite honestly, I think it fast tracked my ability to really make connections in that area. And
Mhm.
so, as much as you would say, "Hey, why'd you do kin?" and was it a waste of time? I would say, you learn a lot, and you don't know how it's really going to help you down the road. But for me, it was highly advantageous in that I could bring sport to the table, connect with the community, meet lawyers, accountants, and other folks that were playing, and
Mhm.
eventually build a bit of a network. So it's funny how things work out, but it worked to
Yeah,
my advantage this time. Yeah.
no doubt. Well, your daughters, I'll watch them, in 10, 12 years when they play for the Canadian national team. With you as their coach leading them to that path. That's your goal, right?
Yeah, I've got my kids life mapped out, and I'm hoping they can take me to retirement really really soon. No,
Yeah, yeah. Got it.
I'm not sure if
Money.
I'm not convinced either of them are going to take this sport path. As much as I'm trying to influence them, I think coaching a 8-year old in soccer is like herding sheep to a certain extent. I think if they can kick with both feet, I think I've done something right. So that's the level we're at, Nick. We're not quite at the national level
Yeah,
yet.
okay. There's still time for that. There's still time for that. Now,
That's
I
right.
understand you talk about networking in sports, and I think this is one way you do it. You play squash, is that correct?
You got it.
And has that is I mean, obviously you love playing, it's good, but do you get a networking component out of that sport, playing that sport at this age?
No, it's interesting you say that. I mean, it's funny how my mind is wired in a way where I'm always trying to make connections, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
social or other. And when we moved to a new part of Ontario, one of the conditions was there has to be some form of athletics that I can be a part of. I'm just an active person. I like to socialize that way. And there was a squash club in Niagara, and I joined the squash club, and the next thing you know, I'm part of a league, and unbeknownst to me, there's a lot of business owners who play squash,
Mhm.
and before you know it, you've got your own microcosm of different business owners and different professionals, and of course, people are asking you what you do, and you're asking them what they do, and you look for opportunities to work together, and the next thing we've now got banners up in the squash club of Portage, and it's been a really good recruitment tool for us for students because there's a lot of tournaments. And I never would have envisioned that this would evolve to the point where, we're putting banners on a squash court, and we've got co-op students scanning the code and reaching out, seeing if we're hiring. So it's funny how the evolution takes shape over time, but
Right.
yeah, it again, it worked out to my advantage.
I want to get into the students and the young talents you have because you've done a really good job there. But you talk about your squash club and networking and things like that, and we recently just talked as a group this past week about referral sources and how important those are to us, and the different strategies and the different ways you network and create those those connections and trust with referral sources, whether it be, attorneys or accountants or wealth managers or whatever the case may be. Sounds like you found a unique way through sport to be able to network with people that either you're going to work with directly or might refer you some business down the road.
Absolutely. I think everyone comes with a different flavor and passion, right? And I think you can use it to your advantage. There's a unique connection of between players who play the same sport. If you're spending an hour with someone in a court and after the match you sit down and you have a conversation, there's something unique to that, right? You're connecting at a deeper level.
Right.
And at the same time, I'd say this sport is one where there's a lot of collaboration, and it's very much a game where you can play as hard as you possibly move in the court, and then once you get outside of that, you have a beer together, and it's quite wonderful that way. And just sitting down, you get to meet people and say, hey, what is it that you do? And you look for ways to help one another, and it just slowly evolves, one person at a time, one match at a time. And sometimes you don't even talk about it. Sometimes it's just more about people getting to know you and it becomes relational. And then I think just naturally as human beings, you say, hey, I really like that person. I really trust that person. If I can help them, or if there's a way where, we can do business together, that's fantastic. And that's my general outlook. And, when you talk about the younger folks that join our firm, whether they're interns or analysts, one of the things that we really try to impress upon them at an early age is, listen, you got to start thinking about, relationships, building a network, understanding what the true business drivers are. It's very much relationship based. And the sooner you start building a network, the sooner you build relationships with people who you can do business with back and forth. It's got to be mutual. The more powerful it becomes. And if you can do it at a young age and learn and grow with other individuals, that are, likely the same age, there'll come a time when it's highly beneficial. And that's really what we're trying to do. It's not the Jim Friesen show at the end of the day. It's about having networks within our network. It's with, each individual focusing on having their own centers of influence.
Yeah. And, like I said, we just recently talked about that. And, I was on a Zoom call the other day with a M&A firm looking to join our group. And, I'm correlating as you're talking, like that is your squash club really correlates well with Cornerstone International Alliance from a perspective of you got this network now of people who you can trust and work with and learn from. And, if you weren't that person that wanted to connect with other people, you wanted to, we say, the problem that we fix and solve is isolation. Like in this industry, you can just be head down, focus on your firm and your group and getting your deals done. And when you look up, it's like, I don't have a professional network within my space. And so being a part of a group like Cornerstone International Alliance really creates that for you naturally and organically. Plus, it gives you opportunity to, kind of come up for air a little bit and then have a conversation with someone from a different firm that's doing what you're doing, and you can, have a question or experience share or learning from them. And so I think, the power of networking and connection is huge. I think that's, would you agree that that's one of the reasons and benefits of you being a part of our group?
100%. I really do believe that business is about relationships. It's about keeping your eyes wide open and understanding the opportunities around you. Things change every day, and I think one of the reasons that made me really excited about joining Cornerstone is, it's hard to have certain conversations with competitors, who are in your
Right.
geography, right? And I'm part of a few business groups where we're very open and candid about, you know, how to grow your business and this sort of thing. But you have to be careful too, because you may be talking to a competitor. And what I really love about Cornerstone is you've got people across the globe. You've got people in your country. They're not direct competitors, but they're people who are experiencing the same challenges that you're experiencing. They're thinking about the same things that you're thinking. And when you're trying to grow a firm, having a conversation about, hey, how are you growing your firm? How are you finding good folks? what does your business model look like? Are you having a tough year? Have interest rates affected your deal flow? These are things that keep us up at night. But having an intelligent group that can sit down and have these discussions is just more valuable than anyone will ever realize. And it has really shaped the way I built my firm, because oftentimes you have an idea and you can go to a group of people and they completely understand where you're coming from, because a lot of them have lived it, they've been through it, they provide guidance, and it accelerates decision making. Um, and it becomes super, super powerful. And if you think about it, and you mentioned this term earlier, isolation. If I'm making decisions in isolation, um, I'm likely missing out on big opportunities. I'm missing out on seeing the big picture. My head's down, I'm doing deals. When you get your head up for air and you start talking to people, you tend to be more strategic. You tend to, you know, be a little more grounded in your decision making. And I think that's really what, business owners need to succeed. They need those other supports. They need other guidance. They need to be able to rebound information off of other folks who really get them. And that's what the association has really provided me with, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that's really the goal for me in Cornerstone is to do exactly what you just said. We want to bring great people together. Great things will happen, and that's what we witness, every day, in my opinion. And we're such a connected group, a close group, and we all trust each other. So I love the fact that you talk about competition, and we don't have that within our group, which is one of the foundations of what we created was that we don't want a competitive, type of atmosphere within our group, and that's why this thing works.
Yeah, and I would say too, you know, everyone who is part of the association really wants everyone to succeed, and we all believe there's lots of business. I think we're just trying to navigate this journey together. We're trying to figure out what the next big opportunity is. We're talking about industries. We're talking about some challenges that we may want to look out for. It's these sorts of conversations that's really valuable. And I think if it were competitive, there wouldn't be as much information sharing.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be as productive. I mean, you know this, Nick. We talk about, the CRM and the tools we have in our toolbox. We can talk about our engagement agreements and, what sort of clauses are really important and relevant. We talk about what profile of people we need on our team. We talk about, the business structure, the fee structure that we charge. All of these things are really important to a business owner. And for me to be able to, get an opinion from someone in Europe, in the UK, and see what their market can bear and what their deal structure is. And then talk to numerous folks across the US and other folks in Canada. I mean, it gives me a good understanding of what's really going on in the world. And I think it has also made me realize there's a lot more consistency. There's a lot more best practices that are very consistent across the globe. And sometimes you just need to be aware of what these best practices are. And that's really what I've learned is sometimes you think you're doing the right thing and you realize other people are doing things differently and it's more effective and you just got to take it.
Yeah. Yeah, the information that's shared, and we say we're a non-judgmental zone, and I think atmosphere, and we think we really have that. We just listen and learn and consume what we can and want, and implement what makes sense for us at a high level. But you joined. I want to get back to Portage, and because you've done an amazing job. You talked about growing your firm and others in our group, and we have a lot of different structures. I say this all the time. We have 26 firms currently, and we're growing. We have 26 ways of doing this thing, running an M&A practice. And so, I find it, you were one of the first firms that came on when I started with Cornerstone, and our first member in Canada. I think our second international member. And so, when you started, back when you joined, kind of paint the picture of from a person, perspective, and where you were from deal size. And I was like, when you started Portage, was it how many years ago was it? Five or
About five
six?
years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What does your firm look like when you founded it 5 years ago?
Well, I mean, it started with me having a conversation with my wife and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking of leaving, a very stable job at a large accounting firm where, I'm getting to the top and I'm making good money and there's lots of stability. And the conversation went something like this, I'm following my passion and, I really believe there's an opportunity. And she said, yeah, you want to sleep inside or outside? That's kind of, how it played out. Thankfully, she left the door open and I could sleep inside. But, there was a risk, right? There's a risk leaving a good, stable opportunity. And what I was seeing, Nick, at the time was, large accounting firms and investment banks were focusing on much larger businesses. And that's where all the attention was given. And the lower mid market was being, in my opinion, neglected. And I was seeing a wave of people who needed a way to get out of their business, not get out of their business, but to have a successful retirement. And for many people, as most of their wealth is in their business. And if they have no exit option, what do things look like? And I went through that on a personal level where, my dad had family business. We worked in the business growing up. I went off and did my thing. My siblings went off and did their thing as well. The time came when he called me and said, listen, I have a medical issue and I can't continue operating. What do I do? And I was out Western Canada at the time, so I wasn't near where my dad was located. And I called some other folks in Toronto that were part of our firm. I said, can you help? And they said, listen, your dad's business is too small and we just can't help. And I called around, I did searching, I did everything that, most people would do to help their parent. Talked to the accountant. We made a few phone calls, but nothing came to fruition. And I think through this process, it made me realize, there's an opportunity to help people in a very meaningful way. And it became my passion project. And I realized at that point that this is something I wanted to do. So the next hurdle was, let's convince the wife that, this is going to be financially feasible. And then day one, we're a startup, we're bootstrapping it. We're trying to figure out why more firms aren't operating the lower mid market. And, it's trying to create stability, trying to understand really how to set up a practice that is sustainable, is going to continue to grow. So that was day one. It was a lean machine, I would say.
Yeah. And yeah, you say definitely taking a leap of faith there for sure. And so you start Portage. You had, correct me if I'm wrong, when you started, did you have 4 people?
It was less than that. I think early on it was myself and an assistant. And
Yeah.
I was the practitioner, marketing person. They helped coordinate my calendar, etc. I think on day one, I was adamant that I didn't want to create a firm that would be, all about me and my face all over everything. I wanted to make sure that it was scalable. And
Yeah.
so I went in with the mindset that we need to create infrastructure. I need to take some of these hats off and make sure that, there's people behind me. I'm not the business. I mean, this is what we're preaching every day, right? We're helping people sell their
Yeah.
businesses and we're saying, listen, let's create something that's saleable. And I went in with that mentality and said, I got to do the same. I got to practice what I preach. And that was my mentality. So yeah, day one, it was quite lean. It was just myself and another individual.
Mhm. And so how shortly after you started did you start bringing, you had a couple people at the early stages. How long did that take you to bring in some more people?
Yeah, I think it took a couple of years, to be honest with you, before I had the network in the lower mid market figured out, consistent deal flow, finally closing some deals, saving a bit of money. My wife early on thought I was running a not for profit. I assured her that eventually the funds would flow.
Yeah.
And that's just how startups work. But, it takes time. And I would say there's a constant evolution. And, I was talking to a mentor of mine and they said, listen, now that you're on your feet and there are 2 of you, there's what's called the valley of death. You've kind of made it to that practitioner level. You got good business flow. but now you need to reinvest and you need to bring people in so that it's more than just you. And you need someone who can help with the marketing and the leads, and you need to create a little more sophistication and, evolve the brand. So, the next step was adding an advisor. So there's three of us. Shortly after, we added a couple more people as deal flow came in. And, there was just a consistent evolution to where we are today, where, we now have 10 people. We have a group that does valuation back office support, and we've got a dedicated ops person and marketing person who's really focused on those key performance indicators, elevating the brand, making sure that, we get some airtime with you. It's all those things that are important, but I would say I've been able to take off a few hats. I even have I brought in a partner last year, and, the idea is really now to create a culture where people enjoy coming to work. They can see themselves being a partner down the road. And that's really what we're about now, is trying to develop the youth and making sure that we have future leaders, because I think that's how the firm needs to evolve. It needs to evolve internally. And if we're not taking the time to develop future leaders, this thing's likely not going to be saleable.
Yeah, right. No, I want to dive in a little deeper to that too, but go back to the point where your mentor told you to reinvest back into the company. Like, talk about how conversation went with your wife. I can only imagine at that point too. It's like, okay, now we're making money, but now we're going to put it back in the business. Like, how long did you have to like consider and think about that before you actually did that? Like, what was going through your mind during that time?
No, it's a good question, and to be quite honest with you, I had a few experiences in life that I could use to look and say, hey, what's life going to look like if I do this? What's life going to look like if, I develop more of an accounting firm model where there's numerous partners and everyone's doing heavy lifting? And I think what I learned is, being a solo practitioner, it's fun because you're that person, you're the expert, you've got people who are supporting you, but you can only scale so far. And I think what I early on, what I envisioned was helping more people and educating people as well, right? So it's beyond my capability. So what I really wanted to do is bring other people on board who would want to learn the trade, so to speak, and I would transition my role into a coach, which, talking earlier, when I was taking kinesiology, that was my passion. So I knew that in some form I wanted to be a coach. I also knew that being, a solo practitioner may check some of my boxes, but not all of them. And I also wanted to provide folks with an opportunity to have a great lifestyle. And it was scary. I'll be honest with you, you finally get to the point where you're generating decent money again, and, you've got good deal flow. And now you're taking, some of the savings and you're throwing it right back into the company, and, you're investing in people before, the cash flow comes back up. So it's a risk, but I think every business goes through it, right? We're helping business owners every day that have taken risk. And yeah, I'm fortunate to have some really good mentors who said, yeah, you're going to go through the valley of death, but you're going to come up the other side, and you're going to have infrastructure, and there'll be some pain and suffering, but overall, you will achieve the objectives that you're looking to achieve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The valley of death. I chuckle at that. Uh, it's a good analogy. So yeah, so you bring on a partner. You have some other deal makers and analysts and things like that. What did when you were building your team? Like you said, you now have 10 people. You started with two. You now have 10. What kind of people were you looking for to bring into your company? Obviously talent is important, but I'm sure culture plays a role in that, and just the personality type of people you wanted to work with. So I guess what kind of person, when you went through that process of hiring these individuals, were you looking for?
Yeah, we still have a very specific list of the attributes that we're looking for, and you're right. I mean, it is a challenge because I find folks can come to the table and maybe five or six the items will check the box and you feel like they're a really good person. But, there's a couple basic ones that, were really important to us. One is, do they really understand what business owners go through, and can they empathize with the business owner? And we really felt like that was important to us because the work that they do, or the work that we do, is all about helping business owners exit. And if they're not truly passionate about, the business in Canada and understanding the problem that many are facing, then, I think the novelty will wear off. I think M&A and investment banking is, kind of a buzzword, and people get really excited to have an opportunity to work in that space. But at the end of the day, you're grinding it out, you're working hard. I think what needs to get you up in the morning is the passion for what you do. So we were looking for people who genuinely either had an experience, had a family member who was part of the business, but really understood the challenges that many of these business owners face in the lower mid market. So I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing is kind of the beer rule, which is if you can't sit down and have a conversation with the individual over a beer, they're probably not going to be a good fit for our culture. We're very collaborative. We're very open. We will sit around a boardroom and discuss different engagements and say, is this a good fit for us? And we need everyone to have a voice. We're going to be respectful of everyone at the table. But, if someone doesn't fit that culture and doesn't feel like they're interested in contributing or being collaborative, it's just not going to work. So, that's, I would say those are the two big pieces. Obviously, work ethic is important. When you get into the space, you mentioned earlier, there are a lot of hours, but when you're following your passion and you're working to a common goal, all of that other stuff goes away. And so, we're looking for people who wanted to celebrate wins as a team and not necessarily work as individuals, and people who also want to take the firm to a new level. So at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's not about the other partner, it's about us helping people achieve, their ambitions in life too. And if their goals are aligned, with respect to what they want to achieve in the M&A world, and they want to help business owners, hey, we're all ears.
Yeah, that's very well said. And I'm going to use the beer rule in the future because I think that's great. And yeah, if you can't sit down and have a beer with someone or a cocktail, they might not be the people you want to work with or represent as clients. I mean, you want to, and I think, us as in general, especially the members in our alliance, like there's a lot of talk about finding the right fit for clients. And, you want to choose the best fit, not only for you as, representing them, but you want to be successful for your clients as well. And so you don't want to take on an engagement necessarily that you are know is not going to be successful for your client and yourself. You want to be able to say no to those opportunities and find deals and opportunities that are good fits. And so kind of talk about that a little bit. Like how do you talk about finding the right fit for your team, but also clients is this kind of similar.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question because I mean we have this conversation around our leadership table all the time, and we've been very intentional about who we connect with out in the community. And sometimes you invest effort and energy into a group of bankers, wealth advisors, lawyers, accountants, and there's just not good alignment, or the opportunities don't present themselves, and you got to pivot. And so since the beginning, my personal philosophy was, have 8 folks, COIs on my list. I am investing in the depth of that relationship. I'm ensuring that I can help them. I understand what they're going through, and they can also provide me with some opportunity to help their clients and add value. And I think it's that attitude that's very important. And you have to understand it's not going to be overnight. I think too, what's really important is you need a brand and you need to get the brand out there, but people need to know who's behind the brand. In our business, selling a company is one of the biggest decisions someone will make. And if they don't feel that you're, integral, if they don't feel like they can trust you and you can't build rapport with them, it will be really, really difficult to close the deal. And what I mean by that, Nick, is if you're the business owner, you're the seller, and I'm advising you. And, you also have some advice from a couple other advisors. And I'm the M&A guy, but someone's chirping in your ear about, hey, you should be doing things a little bit differently. Maybe the valuation doesn't make sense. Who are you going to listen to? It's going to be the person you have the most rapport with, the person you respect the most, right? And we find that deals typically break apart because we haven't had we haven't really evolved that relationship with the seller as we should, and we got to make sure that they see the process that we follow. We have a 90 to 95% success rate. If we follow that journey and we execute, there's no reason why we can't complete it. But if we get derailed because they don't trust us, we haven't done our job building a relationship. So I would say, at the end of the day, it's about the relationship. And if we're taking on clients who don't trust us or are going to want to run the process or want Uncle Bob, the attorney, to make all the calls, it's probably not going to be the right fit. So we want to make sure that we're fully aligned in terms of how the process works. We want to make sure that it is collaborative, but we do have a process, a secret sauce that is effective. And if there's mutual trust and respect, we'll get to the finish line. If you don't have that, when the heat gets amped up and deals start coming in, it just turns to chaos. And you can't take the emotion out of it. So that trust factor has to be there. And we want the younger folks early on in their career to understand this. It's about the relationship. And that also goes back to COIs. That COI has to look at us and say, listen, if my grandmother is selling her business, I want Jim to be the guy that does it because we really believe in what he does. And if you're not that person, it's going to be a challenge for you to continue to have a business in 5 years.
It brings up a lot of thoughts, but I think the one I want to hit on is inevitably people do business with people. And you gotta, like you said, trust each other. You gotta have a good reputation. Your brand is, for Portage is important, but you also have your own personal brand, and that is ever evolving and happening organically and intentionally. I know you do a good job of that. But when it comes down to it, people do business with people. They don't do businesses with, brands and companies, right? Like this, the people within those companies that they do business with. And so I think it's important, said networking and getting yourself out there as a young professional, making sure you're creating those connections, going out golfing and taking, clients out, or joining a squash club, or things like that are ways you can go out there and network and get yourself out there. And when the time comes, hopefully you've done enough work to get, gain that trust, and then they'll reach out to you when the time is right for them, and hopefully represent them to sell the company. But my point being is, it's important to have those people connections because people do business with people.
I think you're 100% right. And I think what I realized too is I had a network coming out of the accounting firm, but I had to create a different network that made sense for the business that we do. And there were some folks that I thought would be a great partner. It didn't work out. And so you've got to reevaluate your relationships and where you're spending your time. And
Right.
it also just takes time, right? Like you can't develop a relationship overnight with significant other and be married in a month. Like it's going to take time for you to really have a bit of a track record and some opportunity to get to know one another and do business together before you're going to land the big fish. And I can tell you it took us a couple of years before we landed a really big fish. Our goal was to move up market. But before you move up market, you got to prove that you're capable. And that's just the world we live in. And so I think you have to also be patient. You'll also have to be aware of where you're at, in that business cycle. And what I'll say too is that's where, a group of cornerstone advisors, are really valuable because you can have that conversation with someone who's been through this before. You can sit down and say, listen, when you started out, how long did it take before deal flow was coming in consistently? And how long did it take to build that COI network? And do I have the right people that I'm really spending time with? Do you get good leads from wealth advisors? Like it's all of those things that you need to be thinking about. And if you can fast track to a good strategic plan and execute, you just move forward much, much quicker. And I think we were fortunate in that, I had some good guidance from the Cornerstone folks, and, you can sit down with them and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking of raising my prices. What are some of the things I need to be thinking about? Well, it helps when you have, over 20 some people you can chat to about this. And at the end of the conversation, you've got a game plan. If it's
Yeah.
just me on my own, I'm taking some educated guesses. I may or may not be going down the right path, right? So it's a lot of those decision making, um, opportunities where, talking to other people who really get it and have been there before, it's so invaluable.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I got to imagine a group like that comes even more into play when you're taking risks of, reinvesting your capital into your company, and you don't know what the future holds, and you're kind of newer to this as a firm owner, and leaning on them, I would imagine, was pretty, helpful and beneficial, but probably, I don't want to speak for you, probably gave you a little bit more, I guess, peace of mind that what you're doing is the correct thing to do and the right thing for you and your company.
There's no doubt about it, and another key advantage too, for myself and other Cornerstone members was, when the pandemic hit us, right?
Mm.
There is so much uncertainty, and you don't know if you should move right or left, or do you reduce your workforce? Is there more opportunity, less opportunity? Well, now you've got a group of people who are grounded, who are saying, "Listen, this is what we're seeing. This is what we anticipate." You guys brought on some really good speakers who could talk about the economy, and they had a forecast as to what they projected, right? And it's having that intel that will help you make a good educated decision. And you also have other experienced people who say, listen, we went through something similar before. Here's how it played out. Here's how it affected our industry. So this is what we need to think about. And interestingly, there's numerous members that had record years,
Yeah.
in the pandemic. And I think that's because they captured the opportunity versus sitting on their hands. And we,
Yeah.
we were no different during the pandemic, Nick. As you know, we decided to put our foot on the gas pedal, do more marketing. We were hopeful that our competitors were complacent, and we decided to educate business owners and tell them about what we're seeing. And we were able to build, a nice little pipeline of individuals that said, "Hey, I heard your podcast on, what's going on in the economy. Would love to talk to you about selling my business." And we turned that unfortunate time frame into an opportunity, and that's because we had good discussions at Cornerstone, and we talked about what different people are doing. But without those discussions, I may have been like my competitor, where I'm sitting on my hands and saying, "Let's wait for this to pass, and then we can make a decision." Right? So
Yeah.
you can see that obviously having the voice of reason and the voice in numbers is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember going through that, and seeing what everyone was doing. And I thought I would echo the same thing. Found comfort in what others were doing or not doing, and you could feel good about the path that you're taking based on what others are doing, and things like that. Um, and one thing we do is we create, mastermind discussions on a regular basis. And you have some younger talent in your group, and I know continuing education is very important to you. I think it's, one of your main objectives in, retaining these great people. What is your plan and focus as far as educating, the people that come into your firm, and making sure they understand the business and how you guys do things and how to work with clients, and and everything that comes with that?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer, as you know, in education. I think a lot of folks, when they do come to us, their formal education, has already taken place.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and what we're really trying to do is expose them to how M&A is done in the lower mid market. And I think they hear my voice chirping in their ear quite a bit, but sometimes what we find more relevant is them talking to people who are doing the same things that they're working on, right? I remember when I was an analyst early on working for a large company, I was in finance, and I learned so much by talking to the person beside me who was, who was much more advanced in Excel than I was. And we would share little tips and tricks, right? And, the environment's a little different in that we're only in the office twice a week. So, what we're trying to do is ensure that they're connecting with other analysts, with other professionals, other M&A folks who are going through similar learning experiences. So that's the beauty, I think, of having the mastermind and having folks connect at different levels. I know the principal meetings are important for me, but there's also valuation meetings, and I know our valuation folks get plugged in, and they get to talk about their particular specialization. I know the analysts also have a call, and this is typically where they get to sit down and say, "Hey, listen, like, what are you guys seeing? What are some of the challenges you're seeing on your end with respect to building out a sim or a teaser?" And they're talking about the stuff that I don't necessarily can add much value to at this point in my career. I have some ideas, but these kids are much more advanced, and I think it's just it's those pieces, those connections that are really important. And if they can realize that there are other people around the world doing what they're doing, and they can brainstorm together and find better ways of doing things, they're going to feel like they've added value to the firm, they've added value to the clients, and B, they're being challenged in the workplace. If they're just copying and duplicating everything we've done, they're not really changing it. It's almost like being in a manufacturing facility where you take widget A, you put it on the press, and out comes B, right? And we know this generation needs to be challenged, especially folks in our space. They need challenge. They're ambitious, and they need to connect. So if we're not giving them those opportunities, they're going to go elsewhere. And you know, every M&A firm that's part of Cornerstone has youth. They have individuals who are doing what we do. So I think it would be unfortunate if we didn't connect them. So I would say that's one of the things that I get really good feedback. They get super excited too when they get to connect with someone, outside the region.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree with you more. And that's why we created Cornerstone International Alliance, is to connect people who do the similar things, and they can learn from each other, and we can help guide that learning path. So, um, Tim,
Just on that point, I mean, I don't want to paint an entirely rosy picture in terms of the M&A space. I mean, there's ups and downs. There's challenges that I face. There's challenges that everyone will face. I was talking to another Cornerstone member yesterday, and we have an hourly call booked where we can talk about certain intel more specific to our country. And they shared with me that they had a very challenging year the previous year, and it was really difficult, right? There were things that were just out of their control, and in business was tough. And we also found the beginning of this year to be very challenging, right? And we can sit down, we can talk about those things. Well, what specifically, was creating those challenges in your mind? What did you do to overcome them? How can we support you? Those things are really important to as a business owner. It's not always perfect, and you're always going to grow, and it's going to be perfect. The growth does go up and down to a certain extent, and it's that support that becomes really valuable. I know we've hit points in time, like I said earlier in the year, where things were really slow, and we were wondering, listen, is our process flawed? Are we doing something different than we did before? What are other people doing? And sometimes you just need that reassurance that, hey, you've got a good game plan. There are some things out of your control. You might be able to make a couple tweaks, but it is what it is. And that support is really valuable. And even at the analyst level, what I'll say is, especially for them, they're a little bit newer to the space. If there's setbacks, maybe a buyer leaves a deal, or, something blows up, they can connect with other folks who are in similar situations and talk about it. It's good for mental health, and it also helps them become aware that other people are dealing with this. And having that support is half the battle. It's a tough game we play, and having the support is really important.
yeah, and the whole process, like you said, there's a lot of ups and lots of downs, a lot of highs, some lows. But and when it comes to having those people that can, like you said, the mental health component, even if it's just venting a little bit, like this is going on, and it's just so invaluable in my opinion to have someone you can just reach out to and commiserate a little bit on those ups and those downs and things like that. And so, I mean, truly, you and your firms and all of us together are really what makes this alliance amazing. It is based on the people that we have, and I think we have an amazing group. Jim, you and your team included. So thank you so much for continuing to be active participants in our alliance. And thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot from you. Hopefully, others who may be in your same position, or in the same position you were 5 years ago, thinking, "Am I crazy to do this?" And then am I crazy to reinvest into my firm? And I think hindsight's 2020, but I would imagine if you go back and do it again, you'd probably do the same thing. And because you guys have a very great team, your culture is amazing. I love working with all your teammates and people at Portage, and you guys are doing it the right way, in my opinion, and you guys are very successful. So kudos to you and taking those leaps of faith, and taking the advice of your mentors and others that you talk to give you that positiveness of what I'm doing is right. And so kudos to you. Great job. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you started your own podcast recently, and I would recommend everybody go check it out. Where can people listening here find more listening to your podcast?
If folks go to our website, portagemaadvisory.com, all of our podcasts are listed on our site in various formats. They can definitely listen to them there. And I do want to thank you, Nick, for having me. I genuinely believe that Cornerstone was one of the big accelerants that helped us get to where we are today. And I would never step out of the group because I feel like I'd be driving blind. I look forward to the in-person meetings. I enjoy the guests that you guys bring on board, and without this group, we wouldn't be what we are today. So thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Well, we're very grateful for you, and I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me and us, and we are better because of Portage and you. So thank you for joining us. That's all we have for this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. One thing that would help out Jim and myself a lot is to like, share, and comment this episode. Send it over to anyone who you think might benefit from listening to our conversation today. And go to our website, cornerstoneia.com/podcast. That's where you can find all of our episodes as well. And just keep driving those connections that you have, and lean on those people, and know that they're with you and in your corner, and you guys will do great things when you have those great connections and that good circle of people around you. Until next time, thank you.